Maya had never imagined her name would appear on television screens, in newspapers, and across the endless scrolling feeds of social media. For most of her life, she had been invisible, a waitress working long hours in a small diner, a woman who lived quietly in a modest apartment with her rescue cat. But now, after Jordan's public apology, she found herself thrust into a spotlight she neither sought nor wanted. Some people praised her as a hero. Others doubted her motives, whispering that perhaps she had only done it for attention. The sudden fame was overwhelming, and every time she stepped outside, she felt the weight of strangers' eyes on her. At first, she tried to ignore it, to carry on with her routine, but it was impossible. Customers at the diner whispered when she passed. Reporters lingered outside her building, and offers poured in from talk shows, magazines, and even publishers promising book deals. One producer called her America's Angel of Kindness, a title that made her laugh bitterly when she thought of the bruises still healing on her face. She had not felt like an angel when she sat behind bars, nor when the world doubted her. She had only been a woman doing what she believed was right. Edward, meanwhile, was slowly recovering under medical care. Though his mind remained fragile, he seemed calmer, less haunted. Whenever Maya visited him at the hospital, his face lit up with recognition. "My friend," he would say, taking her hand in his frail fingers. "You stayed when no one else did." Those words filled Maya with a warmth no newspaper headline ever could. She had not saved him for recognition. She had saved him because it was the only choice her heart would allow, and his gratitude reminded her of why she had acted without hesitation. Jordan watched these visits quietly from the doorway at first, his pride making it hard to step forward. Every time he saw Maya sitting by his father's side, feeding him spoonfuls of soup or simply holding his hand, he felt a sharp twist of shame. He remembered his own cruelty, the fist he had thrown, the words he had spit at her, calling her trash, accusing her of evil, when in truth she had been the only one protecting his father. And while his public apology had shifted the narrative, inside he knew it was not enough. One evening, after Edward had fallen asleep, Jordan finally spoke to her directly, his tone softer than before. "You've been visiting him every day, even after everything that happened." Maya glanced at him briefly, her expression unreadable. "He's my friend. I don't walk away from people who need me." Her words were simple, but they cut deep because he realized she meant them, not for cameras or headlines, but as a reflection of who she was. Jordan sat down heavily in the chair across from her, his hands clasped tightly. "Maya, I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that I want to make this right. Not with cameras or speeches, but with action. Tell me what you need, anything, and I will give it." She studied him carefully, searching for arrogance, but for once there was none, only sincerity and a weariness that mirrored her own. She shook her head slowly. "I don't need your money. Jordan, I don't need your power. All I ever wanted was for people to see the truth, that kindness is not a crime. If you want to make it right, then listen to your father. Be the man he believes you can be." Her words lingered long after she left, echoing in Jordan's mind as he sat by his father's bedside. He realized that all his billions, his influence, his control, had meant nothing when his father had been taken. And it was Maya, a woman with no wealth and no influence, who had done what he could not. It forced him to confront the emptiness of his own achievements. And for the first time in his life, he began to question what legacy he truly wanted to leave as the days turned into weeks. The police investigation into the kidnapping deepened. Several men were arrested, hired criminals who had hoped to extort money from Jordan's empire. Evidence proved beyond doubt that Edward had escaped their grasp before Maya found him. The charges against her were formally dropped. And though she was free in the eyes of the law, Maya still carried the invisible scars of being treated like a criminal. She still woke some nights with the sound of Jordan's furious voice echoing in her ears, the feel of cold metal biting into her wrists. Yet something unexpected began to happen. Communities across the city began to reach out to her. Churches invited her to speak. Charities asked her to share her story. Mothers brought their children to the diner just to meet her, not because she was famous, but because she had become a symbol, proof that even in a world of cruelty and greed, a single act of kindness could change everything. Though reluctant at first, Maya began to accept these invitations not for herself, but because she realized her story could inspire others to act with the same compassion. Jordan attended one of these gatherings quietly, sitting at the back of a church as Maya spoke, her voice steady as she told the audience, "I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just saw someone who needed help and chose not to look away. We can all make that choice every day in small ways that ripple outward." The crowd applauded, but Jordan sat in silence, moved in a way he had not expected. He had spent his life building machines, apps and fortunes, yet here was a woman with no riches, changing lives with nothing but her heart. Afterward, he approached her, his pride still raw. "Maya," he said gently, "you don't know it yet, but you're changing people, including me. I can't undo the harm I caused you. But maybe we can start over, not as enemies, but as something else." She regarded him carefully, her eyes searching, and for a long moment there was only silence between them. Then she said quietly, "Starting over doesn't erase the past, Jordan, but if you're willing to learn, to grow, maybe we can find something better than anger." His lips curved into the faintest of smiles, humbled but hopeful. And in that fragile moment, something shifted. Not forgiveness yet, not trust fully restored, but the first steps toward understanding. And as Edward slept peacefully in the hospital, unaware of the new path unfolding between his son and the woman who had saved him, the world outside continued to buzz with headlines and opinions. But for Maya and Jordan, the noise no longer mattered as much. What mattered was the quiet truth that kindness had bound them together in the most unexpected way. And their story was far from finished. The press conference that Edward Cole insisted on giving had shaken Baltimore like an earthquake, his frail body standing tall in front of cameras, his trembling words declaring Maya Johnson to be his savior rather than his captor, replayed across every television channel and social media feed for the first time. The carefully built narrative that Jordan Cole had unleashed against Maya began to crumble. Commentators debated the truth, some accusing Edward's condition of clouding his judgment, others pointing out the sincerity in his tone and the detail of his recollections. And through it all, Maya's name became known, not as a criminal, but as a question mark. Was she an angel or simply someone caught in the storm of wealth and misunderstanding? Jordan could not sleep that night. He paced the length of his penthouse, the city lights flickering below like restless stars. His anger at Maya had been absolute, but his father's voice haunted him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Edward clutching the podium, declaring her kindness. It clashed violently with Jordan's own memory of her standing in that small apartment, defending herself with shaking hands and blood on her lip. She had looked terrified but also unbroken. There was no greed in her eyes, no malice, only desperation to be believed. And the doubt gnawed at him like a persistent wound he could not ignore. His head of security entered quietly, placing a file on the table. "Sir, we've been reviewing the surveillance footage from the days before your father went missing." Jordan opened the file impatiently, his eyes scanning the grainy images captured from cameras near the country estate where Edward had last been seen. At first it showed nothing unusual. His father walking the garden path, staff moving in and out. But then came the shadowy figures, men with covered faces slipping through the back gates, one carrying something that looked like restraints. Jordan's blood ran cold as he flipped to the next page, an image of his father stumbling barefoot down a side road hours later. "Alone, lost, abandoned, we believe he was taken." "Sir," the security chief said firmly, "we intercepted communications suggesting a ransom plan, but something must have gone wrong. They lost him before making contact. Your father escaped and wandered into the city, confused, until the woman found him." The word struck Jordan like a blow. He sat back, stunned. All the fury he had unleashed on Maya now felt hollow, baseless. She had not been his father's captor. She had been his shield. He clenched his fists, shame rising hot in his chest. He remembered the look on her face when he called her trash, the shock when his fist struck her cheek, the way she had cried out that she had done nothing wrong. He had not believed her. But now the truth stood before him in black and white. She had saved his father when Jordan's own resources had failed. The next morning, as the city buzzed with the latest headlines, Maya sat quietly in a small visitor's room at the station. Her lawyer by her side, she looked pale and worn, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. Yet she carried herself with a quiet dignity that even the weight of accusation had not broken. When the door opened and Jordan stepped inside, the room seemed to shrink, her breath caught in her throat, memories of his fist and his harsh words flooding back. She straightened her back, unwilling to let him see fear. For a moment neither spoke, silence thick between them. Jordan's eyes softened, but guilt kept his voice low. "Maya," he said finally, his tone far different from before, "I was wrong." She studied him carefully, her heart torn between anger and relief. "Wrong about what? That I kidnapped your father? Or that I'm a piece of trash?" The words cut him, his jaw tightening as he lowered his gaze. "Both," he admitted. "I let my fear blind me. I thought you had taken him, but the truth is you saved him. and I owe you more than I can ever repay." Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably, but Maya kept her eyes on Jordan, her voice steady despite the pain still echoing in her cheek. "Your words almost destroyed me. You turned the world against me. People saw me as a criminal because you couldn't see the truth." Jordan winced, the weight of her accusation pressing on his shoulders. "I know, and I will make it right. I have evidence now. Proof that my father was kidnapped and escaped. I will go public with it. I will clear your name." He took a step closer, his voice breaking. "But I need you to know, I am sorry." Tears welled in her eyes, not from weakness but from the overwhelming storm of everything she had endured. She wanted to scream at him, to demand why he had not listened sooner. But when she remembered Edward's trembling smile and the way he had called her his angel, her rage softened into something else. She whispered, "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to your father. He's the one who begged you not to hurt me." Later that afternoon, Jordan did exactly that. He sat beside his father in the hospital room where Edward had been moved for care, his powerful frame hunched like a child as he took his father's frail hand. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, his voice cracking. "I let my anger hurt someone who saved you. I failed you, and I failed her." Edward squeezed his son's hand weakly, his cloudy eyes sharpening for a brief moment of clarity. "Learn from this, Jordan. Money and power can't see the truth, only the heart can. And Maya saw what you couldn't." Jordan nodded, the words sinking deeper than any lecture or business failure ever had. He vowed then that he would not let Maya be ruined by his mistake. He called another press conference, his voice steady but humbled as he admitted his error to the world. "Maya Johnson is not a criminal," he declared. "She is the woman who saved my father when no one else could. My words and actions against her were wrong, and for that I apologize publicly." The cameras flashed, reporters gasped, and the internet exploded once again. But this time the tide was fully shifting. As Maya watched the broadcast from her small apartment, her heart ached with a mix of vindication and exhaustion. She had been through humiliation, violence, and fear, but at last the truth was undeniable. She whispered softly to herself, "Grandma was right. Kindness will never be wasted." And for the first time in days, she allowed herself to smile, yet deep within her, she knew the story was not over because forgiveness was not simple. And trust once broken would take more than apologies to mend. The journey between her and Jordan was only beginning, one built not on wealth or anger but on the fragile, powerful thread of humanity that had drawn them together through pain and misunderstanding. The police station smelled of bleach and stale coffee. The buzzing of fluorescent lights above made the silence heavier. Maya sat on the cold metal bench inside the holding cell, her wrists sore from the tight cuffs, her cheekbones swollen from Jordan's blow. She touched her face gingerly, flinching at the pain. But what stung more than the injury was the disbelief that her simple act of kindness had been twisted into something so ugly. She had spent nights feeding a lonely old man, giving him shelter and care, and now she sat behind bars being called a kidnapper. The hallway outside hummed with voices, reporters crowding near the entrance, their questions muffled but constant. Flashes from cameras pierced the frosted glass. The whole city seemed to be watching her downfall like it was entertainment. The officers avoided her gaze. Some looked sympathetic, others cold, but none stepped forward to listen to her side. In the next room, Jordan Cole stood like a wall of steel, his arms crossed, his jaw clenched. Every word he spoke to the detectives was sharp and precise. She held him for 2 days. She didn't report anything. She had him locked in a filthy apartment. "Do you know how dangerous that is for a man with his condition? Alzheimer's is not a game," she exploited him, "and I want charges pressed." His voice rang with authority, the kind of voice used to giving orders and being obeyed. The detectives nodded, writing notes quickly, because who was going to challenge a billionaire with the power to destroy careers? But in the corner of the room, Edward Cole sat hunched, his frail hands gripping a cup of water tightly, his eyes watery as he whispered, "No, she helped me. I wasn't locked. I wasn't harmed. She gave me food. She gave me warmth." His voice shook, but no one seemed to hear him. Drowned out by his son's anger, his words brushed aside as confused ramblings of a sick old man, Maya's thoughts spiraled as she sat alone, memories of her grandmother's words echoing in her mind. Kindness will never be wasted, even if the world spits on you for it. She had believed that all her life, but now, bruised and locked away, she questioned everything. Had kindness really led her here? To humiliation? To betrayal? She hugged her knees, fighting tears, whispering to herself, "I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong." As though repeating it could make the truth visible to everyone else, the news spread quickly across Baltimore and beyond. Television anchors debated her motives. One screen showed her mugshot with the words angel or abductor, while another replayed shaky phone footage of Jordan striking her in the apartment. The internet split into camps, some furious at her for allegedly hiding Edward, others outraged at Jordan for hitting a woman in front of cameras. Hashtags trended by the hour. Justice for Maya, you protected word, you billionaire abuse. Strangers argued online while Maya sat in silence, cut off from it all, her fate hanging in the hands of people who had never known her name a week before. Late that night, Jordan visited his father in the station's quiet lounge. Edward looked at his son with both love and disappointment. "Why did you hit her?" he asked. His voice soft but steady. Jordan stiffened, anger flashing in his eyes. "She took you, Dad. She hid you from me. I thought you were in danger." Edward shook his head slowly, his gaze sharp despite the cloud of memory loss. "She saved me, Jordan. I was cold, lost. I would have died out there. She gave me soup. She let me rest. You don't see it? But she has a good heart." Jordan turned away, his fists tightening. "She had no right. She kept you away from me, and for 2 days I thought you were dead." I can't forgive that, but the word stuck to him, gnawing at the edges of his anger. He had seen the sincerity in her eyes when she begged him to believe her. He had ignored it, blinded by rage, but now in the quiet of the night, with his father's trembling voice echoing in his ears, doubt began to whisper. What if she really had just been trying to help? What if his fury had turned him into the villain in front of the whole world? In her cell, Maya finally drifted into uneasy sleep, her dreams fractured with images of flashing lights, angry voices, and the sting of betrayal. She dreamed of her grandmother's kitchen, of warm bread and laughter, only to wake to the cold metal bench beneath her. Her spirit weary but not broken, she whispered again, "I did nothing wrong," clinging to that truth like a lifeline. By morning, lawyers were circling like vultures. One offered to represent her pro bono. Another wanted her to sue Jordan for assault. Reporters shouted her name, calling her the mystery woman of Baltimore. The story was no longer just about a missing billionaire's father. It had become about the clash between power and compassion, wealth and humanity, rage and forgiveness in Maya. Quiet, ordinary Maya was now the unwilling face of it all. As the day wore on, Edward demanded to speak at a press conference, his voice frail but his will unshaken against Jordan's protests. He stood before the cameras and microphones, holding onto the podium with trembling hands. "This woman," he said, his voice cracking but strong. "Maya Johnson saved my life. I was lost, confused, alone, and she fed me, clothed me, gave me kindness when the world turned away. She is not my kidnapper, she is my angel." The crowd gasped. Reporters leaned forward, flashes erupted, and the tide of public opinion began to shift. Jordan stood at his father's side, his jaw clenched as he watched the old man's conviction. Torn between pride and frustration, he wanted to protect his father. But the lines between truth and anger were blurring fast, and for the first time in years, Jordan felt unsure, his control slipping, while Maya's story, her truth, was beginning to find a voice louder than his power. The following morning started like any other, the sun barely rising over Baltimore and painting the cracked buildings in soft golden light. Maya stood in her small kitchen stirring a pot of oatmeal, adding too much honey the way Edward liked. She hummed quietly to herself, a habit she had carried since childhood. Her grandmother always said that when you cook with music, food tastes like love, the sound of honey. The cat pawing at the floor filled the silence, followed by Edward's slow shuffle as he entered the room, his white hair sticking up in tufts. He looked tired but smiled when he saw her. "Good morning, Maya," he said, his voice still weak yet filled with warmth. She smiled back, placing the steaming bowl in front of him. "Good morning, Edward. I made your favorite." They sat together at the small table, and Maya felt something she hadn't in years: peace. She had spent most of her life running, working, struggling to make ends meet. Yet in these past few days she had slowed down. She found herself listening to his broken memories and giving him company. She found comfort in the simplicity of caring for someone who asked for nothing but kindness. She never expected the quiet bond between them would change her life forever. As Edward ate, she asked softly, "Do you feel stronger today?" He nodded, though his hand trembled as he lifted the spoon. "Stronger, yes, but still lost. Like I'm searching for pieces of myself that are hidden in shadows." His words made her heart ache, but she reached across the table, squeezing his hand gently. "We'll find those pieces together." What neither of them knew was that across the city, cameras were already tracking Maya's every move. The photo a neighbor had snapped 2 days earlier had gone viral online. The blurry image of Edward walking beside Maya with her arm around him had been shared thousands of times. Some commenters praised her for helping a lost man, but most questioned her motives. Headlines spun stories with half-truths. Mystery woman hides billionaire's father. Kidnapper or angel. The internet had already decided she was guilty long before anyone asked her side. By afternoon, Jordan Cole's black car pulled to a stop outside Maya's building, the tinted windows reflecting the restless crowd of reporters gathering on the corner, microphones and cameras ready. Security men in dark suits moved swiftly, clearing a path as Jordan stepped out. Tall, commanding, his expensive suit flawless, his face sharp and filled with fury. He had not slept properly in days, and his patience had worn thin. He was not here to negotiate or understand. He was here to reclaim his father and expose the woman who dared to keep him hidden. Inside, Maya was clearing the dishes when the pounding on her door echoed through the small apartment. Edward flinched at the sound, his spoon clattering against the bowl. "Maya," he whispered. His eyes wide with fear, she steadied him, trying to hide her own unease. "It's all right. Probably a neighbor." But deep down she knew something bigger was coming. The pounding grew louder, voices shouting, "Open the door, police, open up now." Before she could react, the door burst open and uniformed officers stormed inside. Behind them came Jordan, his presence filling the room like a storm. The moment his eyes landed on Edward, he froze, his jaw tightening, his hands curling into fists. "Dad," he breathed, his voice sharp with both relief and anger. Edward blinked in confusion, rising unsteadily to his feet. "Jordan, is that you?" His frail voice cracked. Tears welling in his eyes, Jordan rushed forward, wrapping his arms around his father with a force that nearly knocked the old man back. But the tenderness lasted only a second before Jordan's gaze shifted to Maya. The warmth disappeared from his eyes, replaced by a cold fire. He pointed at her as though she were a criminal caught red-handed. "You," he hissed, his voice cutting through the room. "You think you can kidnap my father and play angel? You piece of trash." The words pierced the air, sharp and cruel. Maya stood frozen. Her hands trembling, she opened her mouth to explain. But the fury in his voice silenced her. "Wait, please," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't kidnap him, I found him. He was sitting at a bus stop, he didn't even know his name. I brought him here because no one came when I called for help." She tried to speak calmly, but her voice cracked. Jordan stepped closer, towering over her, his eyes cold. "Don't lie to me. Do you think I don't know your type? Women like you see weakness and pounce. You drugged him. You kept him here to use him to get to me, is that it?" Her chest tightened, anger and hurt mixing in her veins. "No," she cried out. "I didn't even know who he was until last night. I just wanted him safe. He was hungry, cold, and lost. I swear." But Jordan wasn't listening. His rage had built too high, fueled by sleepless nights and the fear of losing his father. In a sudden burst, his fist flew, striking across her cheekbone with a sound that echoed in the small apartment. The force sent her stumbling back against the table, pain exploding across her face, blood trickling from her lip. The room gasped into silence, even the officers hesitated, unsure of what line had just been crossed. Edward's frail voice broke through, panicked and trembling. "Don't hurt her. Jordan, she helps me, she gave me food, she kept me warm, please. Don't hurt Maya." His words shook, his hands trembling as he tried to step between them. The crowd outside had already begun to gather near the windows, phones raised, live streams capturing every moment. Whispers turned to gasps. "Did he just hit her?" someone murmured. "Is that the billionaire Jordan Cole striking a woman?" Screens lit up. TikTok and Twitter already alive with the unfolding scene. Maya wiped the blood from her lip with the back of her trembling hand, her knees unsteady but her eyes burning with desperate honesty. "I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I found him, I helped him. That's all." But Jordan pointed at her like a prosecutor, his voice booming. "You kept him hidden for 2 days. You think I won't see the truth? You will pay for this." Officers moved between them at last, restraining Jordan with firm hands. "Sir, let us handle this," one officer said firmly, but Jordan snarled. "Arrest her now. She kidnapped my father. She's been hiding him in this filthy apartment." The officers looked at one another, torn between the billionaire's demands and the bleeding woman before them. Edward clutched Maya's arm, his cloudy eyes wide with fear. "Why is Maya crying?" he whispered helplessly, his confusion breaking hearts. But the handcuffs clicked around her wrists anyway, the cold metal biting into her skin. She gasped, shaking her head. "This is a mistake, please." "You don't understand." As she was dragged toward the door, Jordan stood rigid, his jaw tight. Blood still on his knuckles, rage in his eyes. He did not see the kindness, the warmth, the meal shared. All he saw was betrayal, and the world outside their walls was already choosing sides. Chunk Thurin, the third evening. The air outside was thick with summer humidity, clouds pressing low over the city. Maya had finished her shift late and her feet ached from standing for hours. But when she stepped into her apartment, the tiredness melted away at the sight of Edward sitting up straighter than before. The cat honey stretched across his lap. He smiled faintly when he saw her, his thin face brighter than it had been days ago. "You came back," he said softly, his words carrying relief. Maya set down the bag of groceries she had carried home. "Of course I did, you thought I'd leave you," she teased gently. And he shook his head, embarrassed. "No, but sometimes people don't stay. Sometimes they just disappear." She cooked quickly, frying chicken in her small pan, stirring vegetables and heating bread in the oven. The scent filled the apartment, warm and homey. Edward inhaled deeply as though the smell itself gave him strength. When they sat down together, he ate slowly but with more energy than before. "You remind me of someone," he said suddenly between bites, his brow furrowed in thought. "A woman I used to know. She was kind like you, always feeding everyone before herself, but her name—" "It slips," his voice cracked, frustration flickering in his eyes. Maya reached across the table, her hand brushing his. "Don't force it. It will come when it wants to. Until then, I'll listen to whatever you remember." After dinner, they sat by the window, looking out at the streetlights flickering below. Maya told him about her dreams, about wanting to finish nursing school one day, about how her mother worked herself to the bone cleaning houses, about how she herself had been working double shifts since she was 16. She laughed lightly. "People say I'm too soft. That kindness won't pay rent, but I can't help it. It's who I am." Edward's eyes softened, he whispered. "The world doesn't have enough hearts like yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." His words sank deep into her chest, filling her with a quiet pride she rarely felt. But outside the little bubble of warmth they had built, things were beginning to shift. The neighbors had noticed the old man coming and going with Maya. Whispers grew in the hallway. People speculated about who he was. One neighbor muttered cruelly that Maya had probably picked up a drunk from the street. Another whispered that the man looked familiar, like someone they had seen in the news. Phones began snapping pictures discreetly, and in the age of social media, rumors could spread faster than wildfire. The next morning, as Maya walked with Edward to the corner park for some fresh air, she noticed people staring more than usual, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. Edward clung to her arm, confused by the attention. "Why are they looking?" he whispered, his voice tight. Maya squeezed his hand reassuringly. "Ignore them. People always stare when they don't understand." But deep down, unease pricked at her stomach later that day. As she returned from the store, she overheard two women outside her building whispering sharply, "That's him. I swear it's him. The missing billionaire's father. Edward Cole. It's been all over the news, and she's hiding him in her apartment." Maya froze, the grocery bag in her hand nearly slipping. Her heart thundered in her chest. She wanted to step forward and correct them, to explain, but fear silenced her. What if they were right? What if Edward really was someone important? Someone people were desperately searching for inside? She set the groceries down and looked at him closely. The features of his face, the way he carried himself despite the confusion, he did have an air of dignity beneath the weariness. "Edward," she asked carefully, "this son you remember, Jordan, is he someone people might know?" Edward's eyes flickered, a tear escaping before he spoke. "Jordan, yes, he was always ambitious, strong, louder than life. I think he became something big, but I can't remember what. I only remember feeling like I lost him long ago." His voice broke, and Maya's chest ached at the pain behind the words. That night, while Edward slept on the couch, Maya sat at her kitchen table with her old phone glowing in the dim light. She searched his name again, and this time the screen filled with headlines. Her breath caught in her throat. Edward Cole, father of billionaire Jordan Cole, missing for 3 days. Family offers reward. Public concerned. She stared at the photo on the screen, the face younger but unmistakable. The same gentle eyes, the same crooked nose. It was him. The man who had been eating her food, stroking her cat and calling her kind. He was the missing father of one of the richest men in the country. Her hands trembled, fear rushing in. What if people thought she had kidnapped him? What if they accused her of keeping him for money? Her stomach turned at the thought. She whispered to herself, "I just wanted to help. I didn't know." Yet even as panic rose, she looked at him sleeping peacefully. His face relaxed for the first time in days, and she knew in her heart that she would not abandon him. Not now, not ever, no matter the cost, far across the city. Jordan Cole sat in his glass-walled office, towering over Baltimore. His jaw tight, his phone pressed against his ear. "Find him," he barked to his security chief. His eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. He had power, money, and influence, but none of it meant anything while his father was gone. Rage and fear boiled in his chest. He imagined his father cold, lost, or worse, and he swore to himself he would punish whoever dared to keep him away. Unaware of the storm building, Maya prepared another meal the next evening, setting the table as though nothing outside mattered. She tried to hold on to the fragile peace they had created, but fate was already moving, faster than she could imagine, and soon the quiet sanctuary she had given Edward would be shattered by accusations. Flashing cameras and the collision of two worlds, hers built on quiet kindness, his built on wealth and suspicion. Maya guided Edward slowly through the cracked sidewalks of Baltimore, her arm firmly supporting his frail body. His steps were unsteady, and every few feet he paused to catch his breath. But she kept encouraging him, whispering softly that they were almost there. The city buzzed around them with cars, laughter, and loud music spilling out of corner bars. Yet in that small bubble between the two of them, the world felt quieter, heavier, as if the only thing that mattered was making sure he reached safety. When they finally arrived at her apartment building, Edward looked around uncertainly, his eyes darting from the old brick walls to the dim streetlight above the door. "Are you sure it's all right?" he asked nervously, his voice trembling as though he were intruding. Maya opened the door and smiled warmly. "It's all right, I live alone, just me and my cat. You'll be safe here." She led him inside, and the warmth of the apartment wrapped around them both. Her place was small, barely more than 2 rooms, but it was clean. The scent of lavender candles faint in the air, and the soft hum of a heater in the corner made it feel like a haven compared to the cold street outside. She helped him sit down on the couch, her old rescue cat instantly jumping up and curling against his lap as if sensing his loneliness. Edward's face softened, his wrinkled hand stroking the cat's fur slowly. "He likes me," he whispered in surprise. Maya laughed quietly. "She likes anyone who needs comfort. Her name's Honey." For a long moment the room was silent except for the sound of Honey's soft purring. Maya went into the kitchen and began preparing more food, warming up the leftover bread and stew, and brewing tea with extra sugar since he seemed so fragile. She returned with the tray and placed it in front of him. "Eat a little more, it'll help your strength." Edward nodded gratefully, though his eyes filled with tears as he lifted the spoon again. "No one has cared for me like this in a very long time," he said softly, his voice breaking on the words. She sat beside him, watching carefully. "Don't you have family? Someone who's looking for you?" He hesitated, his spoon shaking slightly in his hand. "I think I do. I remember a name, Jordan. But my memory slips, it fades like smoke. Sometimes I feel like I've lived 100 years and forgotten them all." He pressed his temple with his fingers, frustrated. "Everything slips away, but I know I'm not meant to be alone." Maya reached out, resting her hand gently over his. "You're not alone tonight. I promise." The sincerity in her tone calmed him. His breathing eased, and soon after he leaned back into the couch, drifting into sleep with Honey curled close to his chest. That night, Maya sat awake in the chair nearby, watching him. She could not explain why she felt so protective over this stranger, but something in his fragile state. The confusion in his eyes touched her deeply. She thought about her own father, who had left when she was young, how she always wished someone had taken care of him when he was lost in his struggles. Maybe this was her chance to do for someone else what she had never been able to do for him. The next morning, she woke early to prepare oatmeal with too much honey, because she had remembered him flinching at the bitterness in the stew. When he stirred awake, confused at first, his eyes softened when he saw her in the kitchen. "Maya," he said her name carefully as if trying not to forget it. "Thank you." She brought the bowl to him and smiled. "Eat first? Then maybe we can try to find this Jordan you spoke of." As he ate, she took out her old phone and searched online for missing persons, typing in his name carefully, but nothing came up. Not yet. She thought maybe she needed more details, but she didn't want to overwhelm him by asking too much at once. Instead, she sat with him, asking small questions about his favorite foods, the places he remembered, the songs that made him smile. He couldn't recall everything, but when he laughed at a memory of peanut butter sandwiches and crunchy bread, she joined him, her heart warming at the sound. For the next 2 days, their routine became simple. Maya went to work at the diner, leaving extra food at home for him, then returned in the evenings to cook warm meals. They ate together, shared stories, hers filled with simple truths about her hard work and dreams of finishing school, his fragmented with half-memories of gardens, long car rides, and a son named Jordan, whom he seemed both proud of and distant from. What Maya did not know was that the world outside her small apartment was buzzing with news. Edward Cole had gone missing 3 days earlier, and the headlines of business papers and television screens flashed with the words, "Billionaire's father disappears." His son Jordan Cole, a powerful tech mogul worth billions, had put the city on alert, offering rewards and demanding answers. But Maya had no television at home and no time for newspapers. She lived paycheck to paycheck, surviving on faith and grit, so she had no idea that the man in her living room was the father of one of the wealthiest men in America. Maya meets the lonely old man. The city of Baltimore was alive that evening. Cars honking in the distance, people rushing home after long shifts, neon lights flickering over old brick buildings. Maya Johnson walked slowly down the sidewalk, her backpack heavy with leftovers from the diner where she worked double shifts. She always carried extra food, not because she was greedy, but because she never knew who might need it more than her. She was 27, tall, graceful, and tired. Her hands smelled faintly of onions and soap from washing dishes all day, but her eyes, warm brown and soft, held a quiet strength. She had known struggle all her life, but she never let it harden her heart. If anything, it made her kinder. As she passed the bus stop near Charles Street, she noticed him, an old man sitting hunched forward on the cold bench, his coat torn, his shoes mismatched, his face pale under the harsh yellow light. He looked so small, so fragile, like the world had forgotten him. Maya slowed her steps, her instincts sharp. Most people would have kept walking, maybe even crossed the street. But she had been raised differently. Her grandmother used to say, "Child, when you see someone in need, you don't ask why. You just ask how." She walked closer, her voice gentle. "Sir, are you okay?" The old man lifted his head slowly, his eyes cloudy but kind. He blinked as if he were seeing her through fog. I don't know where I am." His voice trembled. "I was looking for something, for someone, but I can't remember." Her heart clenched. He was shivering, and she saw how thin his hands were, bones pressing against wrinkled skin. She noticed the faint bruises on his wrist, as if something had been tied there once. "What's your name?" she asked softly, sitting on the bench beside him. He frowned, his lips quivering. "Edward, I think." "Edward Cole," he whispered, then shook his head as though unsure. "Hi, Edward," she said, giving him a small smile. "My name's Maya." She opened her backpack and pulled out a container. The smell of warm stew rose into the cold night air. "Have you eaten today?" His stomach growled before he answered, his cheeks flushing. "No, not really." She handed him the container and a spoon. "Here, it's not much, but it'll help." Edward's hands trembled as he took it. He lifted a spoonful slowly, tasted it, then closed his eyes, a soft sound leaving his throat. This is good, thank you." Maya felt something shift in her chest, the way he ate, the way he looked at her with gratitude so pure. It made her own struggles feel small. People walked past them. Some glanced, some frowned, but no one stopped. To them it was just a random girl feeding a homeless old man. But to Maya it was more than that. She stayed with him until he finished every drop, then handed him a bottle of water. He drank greedily, coughing a little but smiling. "Do you have somewhere to go?" she asked. Worry edging her voice, he shook his head. "I don't know. I was looking for Jordan." His voice cracked. "But I don't remember how to get home." Maya bit her lip. "Okay, listen, it's cold out here. I can't just leave you. I live a few blocks away. You can rest for tonight, just one night, until we figure something out. Is that okay?" His eyes widened, almost like a child's. "You'd do that?" "For me, of course," she said simply. "Come on." He tried to stand, his legs weak. And Maya slipped an arm around him, steadying him. Together they walked slowly down the block, her small frame carrying more weight than it should. But she didn't mind.